Are they conscious of the fact that this rise of a globalized working class may pose some challenges for them?
Well, I think they already have. I mean, the very premise of globalization is that you have globalized production, not just global trade, but companies in which production is ordered. And I think that, you know, here's a parallel. In the early 19th century, you used to be able to find on a wall a sheet of paper saying what the job rate was for this, that or another job within a cotton spinning factory. So if you were a rover or a spinner or a piecer, all these things we don't even know what they were today mostly, you had set wages. Now in the head offices of the global HR offices of the global companies, there's the same kind of thing. There is, what do you expect to pay, what does it cost to employ a worker in New Delhi versus a worker in Dubai? Not just what are the wages, but what are the social benefits. They know it. That's their Bible. That's their Bible. View.
Paul Mason, Live Working or Die Fighting. Brilliant book. Paul isn't just an economics guru, by the way. He writes an idiosyncratic blog, which you can read on the BBC website. I commend it. He's probably the only man who can pen a critique of David Miliband, which drops in songs from the YouTube generation. Paul Mason, thank you very much indeed for joining us, and the best of luck with the new edition. After the break, I'll be jousting with Steve Rawls of the drugs charity Transform. Believe me, you don't want to miss it.
Ow! Just the way you move, it's a real deal. And the way you groove, oh, it's the way I feel, yeah. You're a wild thing and you're a natural star. Got me crazy about the way you walk. So I want you, baby, you're the real.
Welcome back to The Real Deal with me, George Galloway, on Press TV. Now, my next guest is the only man over the last few years with whom most of the listeners thought I had lost an argument. That doesn't make him right, of course. He's Steve Rawls from the drugs charity Transform, and I hope I'm not misrepresenting his position when I say that he wants heroin and other Class A drugs legalized. Welcome, Steve, to The Real Deal. Have I misrepresented you? Is that your position?
It's something of an oversimplification. I would say we want these drugs legalized and regulated within an appropriate legal controlled framework.
Tell me what that would mean.
Well, for something like heroin, we already have a legal framework to make it available through medical prescriptions, so that people who are deemed by doctors to warrant who are long-term dependent users who failed in other treatment programs can get injectable heroin on prescription from doctors.
In the Carlton in Glasgow, you die at an average age of 53. 9 miles away, in Lindsay, 9 miles away, you live to your 81. One of the principal reasons for that is the killer heroin epidemic on the streets of the East End of Glasgow. I take it you wouldn't dispute the role that these Class A drugs are playing in the killing of our young people. Not many of them get old enough to be described as other than young people. How would legalizing this poison help get people off drugs?
Well, there's several points to make there. The first one is that those people who are dying from heroin-related illness or complications are all using illegal heroin. People who are on a prescription for heroin generally have a life expectancy that's no shorter than anybody else. Heroin itself is not particularly a dangerous drug. It's certainly very addictive, but it's not particularly toxic to the body. The dangers from heroin specifically come from using contaminated heroin with dirty needles in dangerous, dirty environments. And all of those things are a direct consequence of the illegal market and pushing users into the hands of the gangsters who sell these things and the kind of unsafe, marginalised environments where they will use them in very, you encourage dangerous behaviours in dangerous environments by pushing these people into the hands of the illegal market.
Well, of course I can see that argument, but of course we'd be pushing them into potentially a lifetime, however short or long, of drugged stupefaction by making it a perfectly legal pastime. Like drinking, for example.
Well, again, I mean,
you get put in the House of Lords for selling drink. You get put in prison if they catch you for selling drugs. If you make drugs just like drink, how long before WD and HO will set up a factory in Glasgow to make it? And how long before it's advertised on the television?
Well, as long the government is in a position to intervene with drugs that are within their legal ambit. If a drug is illegal, what you do is you abdicate all control for that drug in terms of pricing, in terms of, market, advertising, sales, age controls, everything. Availability is entirely handed to criminal profiteers and unregulated street dealers and organised criminal gangsters. So what you do, you don't get rid of the drug problem, you just give control of it to violent gangsters. That's the difference. And coming back to the point you made earlier about life expectancy, one thing that has been observed where heroin prescribing programs have been rolled out more substantially than they are in the UK, in mainland Europe, for example, is that if someone gets onto the prescription, they are then in regular contact with doctors, they're in regular contact with services, and it becomes far more likely that they actually will get into a treatment program, sort their lives out and get off heroin altogether, than if you leave them in the hands of an underground illicit drug scene where they're scared from going to see services and treatment providers because of the stigma of criminality.
You say far more likely. How much more likely? And give us some evidence for that. Where has this been tried and where has it worked?
Well, it's been tried most extensively and most famously in Switzerland, where there was some experiments with zones of tolerance where they allowed illegal heroin to be used and they just let people get on with it. That didn't really work out. It became notorious, actually, the Needle Park in Zurich. So what they then did was they rolled out a network of national clinics where you could actually go to the clinic and you consume your heroin on site under medical supervision, and it's using clean needles and using clean pharmaceutical products. So there was no issues with bloodborne diseases, HIV and hepatitis being spread by sharing needles. There was no issues of overdose because you're under medical supervision using a controlled dose. And these people are in daily contact with doctors and treatment providers.
And how many of them came off it?
I don't have the stats here. Certainly, if
come on, you're an expert. You're the most expert person on this subject I've ever met. Don't tell me you don't know.
I don't have the research paper in front of me, but it's these things are all published in journals. It's all been peer reviewed, and it clearly showed that the populations that were on these programs had far better health outcomes, and far more of them actually got into treatment and got clean than the ones who were left in the hands of the criminal empire. And in fact, a very similar program is being piloted in the UK now. There is actually a pilot program going on in London